I think this leads beautifully into the next session, our keynote address. And we have a wonderful gentleman here to speak to us. We have with us Mr. Christian Pedersen. He is the Chief Product Officer of IFS. He leads the R&D and product strategy, ensuring industry-leading solutions with leadership roles at SAP and Microsoft. He excels in aligning innovation and business value. A motorsport and sailing enthusiast, and he's going to love it in Sri Lanka. He resides in Seattle with his family. His speech will be on leadership through innovation and transformation. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Mr. Christian Pedersen.
Good morning, everybody. Did you have your coffee? I'm super excited about being here, even though I must say I'm quite a bit nervous. When I first signed up for this, I was like, yes, I'll go out, I'll talk about all the things that you just heard about here, what we do with AI, how we are scheduling technicians all over the world, AI is doing that, all the things that we do, but that's not what the title says. The title says leadership through innovation and transformation. So the first thing I did was just to ask myself, like, what is leadership? And then I thought to myself, leadership is so many different things. There is not a single person in this room who's not a leader. You're showing your commitment to leadership by being here today. And when I'm done with my 30 minutes here, I hope you will agree that everybody here is a leader, especially in the times that are ahead of us. But I also thought a lot about, okay, so leadership through innovation and transformation. What does that mean? What is innovation and what is transformation? Because if you don't define that, how can you talk about leadership? And therefore, I wanted to spend a little time just, let me see if I can find the right ones. There we go. I want to start out by actually talking about innovation and transformation. And when I think about innovation and transformation, it is so many different things. But I really break it up into 3 different categories. There's what I call transformative innovation, disruptive innovation, and applied innovation. And I want to give you a couple of examples of these different things because they are vastly different. They require extremely different types of leadership. And as leaders, depending on your organization, your role, where you are in your career, you should be able to transfer between all the different types of leadership, besides all the other leadership styles that you need to be able to transition between in your daily work. But let's look at transformative innovation. And you may say, this is not very innovative. In fact, this machine is from 1767. It was the first industrial steam machine that was actually built at scale. And when I say the first that was built at scale, it was not the first one. People had been trying to control steam for years, but it was actually dangerous because steam creates pressure and it can explode and all kinds of things can happen. So it wasn't until we learned how to control the steam, we had relief valves, we could actually manage this thing. So phenomenal innovation. And if you look back on the leadership that required to build this first steam machine, that was very different from what you saw later. Because what happened with this steam machine, and that was the transformative innovation, is it actually got applied. How did the steam machine get applied? Well, the result of the steam machine was that somebody actually invented the locomotive. And the notion of mass transportation at scale came out of this as applied innovation, another type of innovation. But it's an innovation we would never have seen if we hadn't had the steam machine. So a really, really interesting aspect of it. Another thing that happened was that the steam machine started coming out in this industrial manner, and businesses, companies, they could put and install their own steam machine. So factories started to come out where the factory had its own steam machine, and the steam machine was driving belts that were driving all the way around the factory. And with this belt, there were different sprockets, so you could attach different machines that could do different things. And this was really the beginning of the Industrial Revolution that really changed everything on how we produce things. We could mass produce things. We could do things that we had never been able to do before because we had this tremendous power from steam. So another example of the transformative innovation by the steam machine. Oh, wrong way. Now, what makes this even more interesting is that the management and control of steam is something we still do today. In New York, one of the largest cities in the whole world, steam is a fundamental source for energy. Steam is being used to produce the electricity in huge parts of New York today. So all the way back from then, this is still the fundamental thing. And you can go to other places where controlling steam has become fantastic. Go to Iceland, where you have a lot of hot springs. You actually have steam coming straight out of the ground that can now be controlled and automatically generate energy. So a phenomenal piece of innovation that we would not have been where we are today if this piece of transformative innovation hadn't happened. Now, there are other examples of this. In 1903, the Wright brothers, they took flight for the first time. They actually managed to take a plane, or build a plane, after a few unsuccessful attempts, a lot of bruises and scars and things. But they survived until then, but they got to this point in 1903 where they could fly. Now that spurred and created a whole new industry. In the following years, there were so many things that happened around aerospace, flying, and so forth. And in 1919, Charles Lindbergh, he flew the Spirit of St. Louis from New York to Paris for the first time. Guess how long it took? It took 33 hours. He was flying for 33 hours on his own from New York to Paris in that plane. That created a whole new set of demands that had never existed before. No product manager back in 1918 would talk to a customer and the customer would say, like, I want to fly across the Atlantic. Nobody could even dream about that. But after that flight, suddenly that set of opportunities opened up, and that became the beginning of commercial international airline traffic and transportation all over the world that started after these years. And that's still the fundamentals and foundation of how we travel globally today as well. But that was not enough. In 1969, there was a new type of innovation. It was still a plane. It was still about flying. But we wanted to fly across the Atlantic at supersonic speed. In 1969 was the first flight of the Concorde, innovation between British aerospace engineers and French aerospace. They built the Concorde. It traveled at twice the speed of sound. It could go from Paris to New York in less than 4 hours. You would be landing before you took off. Not by cheating and going from Australia to the US and cross the date line, but legitimately you would land before you took off. Isn't that mind-blowing? Imagine you were flying from here to Paris and you left at noon and you would arrive for breakfast before you took off. That's what the Concorde did. It went into commercial use, and it was in commercial use from 1976 to 2000 until there was a fatal crash with the Concorde, and it was taken out of service. Now, it was actually not the crash that took it out of service. That was just the final straw. But what had happened in these 30 years was that the time had changed. The price of fuel had skyrocketed. And you can imagine a plane like that, how much fuel it uses. So it was not feasible to actually operate it anymore. It was loud, it used a lot of fuel, it didn't work, and then it crashed out of business. We haven't seen it since. Now, the reason why I'm using this as an example is, again, the type of innovations here are extremely different. Obviously, the innovation from the Wright brothers was to fly. Charles Lindbergh, he made that flight, that plane, he made it reliable, he made it effective, and it could fly for 33 hours. When they built the Concorde, it was a whole different type of problems. They weren't challenged with flying. They were challenged with flying at speed, twice the speed of sound. What happens, there must be some engineers in here. What happens when you travel at twice the speed of sound? You generate a lot of heat. So the heat that was generated when the Concorde were flying actually does that from when the Concorde is on the ground to when it's flying, it stretches this much. Now, can you imagine going twice the speed of sound and the plane stretches? What does that do to material science, the innovation you have to do around materials? Not only the materials themselves, but how do you have materials that can actually work together and flex in the same way? The wiring in the plane, the steel, aluminum that's in the plane, the paint on the plane. All these things had to be innovated. And that was a massively different effort. That was an effort that required a lot of different teams to work in sync with each other, not unlike how we actually innovate and do things today when we know what we have to innovate. Very different from the innovation and the leadership that the Wright brothers applied. So fascinating types of innovations that still dictates a lot of what we do today. Now, there are other types of innovation that happens. And every time there's innovation, there's change. What you're seeing on the screen here on the left-hand side is from the Great Lakes in the northern US. In the wintertime, you have ice pickers out there. They're chopping up the ice in the lake, chopping into big blocks, taking it out of the lakes, storing it in big warehouses. This was in 1920s, something like that. So they took this ice out, stored it in big warehouses. Now, in the summertime, they would then sell these ice blocks to people. People would bring the ice blocks home, put them in their own cupboards, and keep their food cool in the summertime with ice blocks. Guess what happened? Some idiot invented the refrigerator. Can you imagine what happened to that entire industry of companies, people, and labor that worked picking ice? That industry disappeared almost overnight. Almost overnight, thousands and thousands of people lost their jobs. The industry disappeared. Companies were gone. Everything was gone. But what happened at the same time, very close to the Great Lakes in Detroit, Ford invented the assembly line and started scaling car production from being a model where 6 to 7 people would work on a car and they would assemble all the pieces of the car, and then once every 2 weeks the team would spit out a car. So Ford invented the assembly line where people now specialized in certain tasks and things just moved around by the assembly line. By the way, they did this not with the steam machine to begin with. They did it with a set of horses that were pulling a wheel around outside the factory, but basically moving the same belts around as a steam machine does. So that was another type of innovation. However, when Ford introduced the assembly line, they could build many more cars. They could build them at a much higher quality because people were really specialized in what they did. And the impact of the workers was that they went from 6 working days a week where they worked 12 hours a day to work 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. They all got health care. They made more money. Prosperity went up. They all got a car from the factory. So a massive change, and that became the beginning of mass production of cars. Now, why am I telling this story now? I'm telling this because that happened just about the same time, or the scale out started at the same time as the ice pickers on the Great Lakes lost all their jobs. Guess where they went to work? They went to work in the car factories, on the assembly lines, So pieces of innovation that came in completely changed things, and people changed jobs, people changed roles. There were different ways of doing things. And that is what we always see with innovation. There are changes coming. There's been a lot of talk about AI. AI is also changing things. But it is, in the bigger picture, always for the better. In isolation, if I was that ice picker that lost my job, I would not be happy. But I would have to look at, okay, how do I get myself ready for the next role, the next job? Wrong way. So each of these stages of big innovation that has happened, what always happens is that you see exponential productivity. You saw exponential increase in productivity from the steam machine, from transporting passengers, transporting goods by train, producing cars, mass producing cars, exponential productivity. Does that sound like AI? Exponential increase and improvement in productivity. Every step along the way here, you saw increase in prosperity, quality of life. I don't think any of us would have been without any of the innovations that I have talked about here. Would you have been without any of them? Where would we have been today? All the time it moves forward. But all the time it is also changing the workforce. Software development today is not what it was 25 years ago. It's very different today. Very, very different. And that is super, oh, I keep pressing the wrong button. Those are super important things, of course, to think about when we think about leadership as well. I've been in the software industry for many years. I'll let you guess how long. But I've been in the software industry for many years. I have seen some phenomenal transformation in the software industry. Not transformative in the way that the steam machine was, but phenomenal transformations that has happened. I have always had a very laser-focused dream about software, the promise of software. The promise of software for me is always to automate what we have in our heads. That is, at the end of the day, that is the promise of software. From the first piece of computing that came out, where IBM didn't dare to call it a computer, because they were producing these stub cards and all that stuff. So they called it something else, but it was actually a computer. That was aimed at automating things, taking things that were being done manually and automating it. That has been happening ever since. That is the promise of software. For decades, I'm kind of like, we have so far to go. There's so much we need to do to make software so good that it can just be used and it can know everything. AI is the next frontier. I won't say it's the last frontier, because there's many aspects of AI. But it just takes that next level of automating, learning what we have in our heads. And there's no magic to it. At the end of the day, AI is no better than what it knows. How do you make decisions today? The way you make decisions today is you look at all the data in front of you. You look at all the data that sits out here. You consider all the experience you have. You may take advice from others. You go interview others, AI is no different. The difference is a lot of that information is now digital. And AI can consume it. And it can consume it at rates that we can't. It can consume volumes that we can't. But what we can do is we can guide it. I usually say AI does not replace people. But people that know how to use AI will definitely be preferred over people that don't know how to use AI or don't use AI. Simply because they are just more productive, they produce more, which every step in the industrial set of revolutions have done. Margaret Mead once said, "Never believe that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed that's all who ever have changed the world." There's a very important saying, and it goes back to what I started out by saying. Everybody in here is a leader, especially in this era of AI. Things are now moving so fast that we are being challenged on our traditional leadership models. The traditional models of doing agile, for instance, I think will be significantly challenged in the coming period. The way we develop in IFS, we have what we call a 7-stage development process. Very stringent, very effective. I think that's going to look very different in a few years. To all the IFS people in here, now you have a heads up. But it's because things change, the way we work change, and we are all becoming leaders. We all need to be leaders. And what are the different types of leadership then that we see both today, but also especially in the future? Well, there's the visionary leader, the visionary that will share a lot about how we want to change the world and things will become very different. Then there's a transformative leader. The transformative leader is the one that really inspires others to have a vision, inspires others to go to the next length. When the Concorde was developed, there was a lot of transformative leadership. There was definitely a vision of flying across the Atlantic in less than 4 hours. But there was also the transformative leadership in inspiring people that were working on the material science to make sure it could handle twice the amount of speed of sound in speed. So very, very different and very transformative. You really needed to inspire them, have them all buy into the vision, but then transform their particular area. Then there's the strategic type of leadership, which some of them applies, like now we know exactly what we need to do. Here's the strategy, here's the plan, here's exactly what we need to do. And then you need to get people on board with that. And then there's the transactional leader. The transactional leadership is when you actually have plans, you have things that are put in place, and you're just going at it bit by bit by bit. You follow an agile model or you follow a different model, whatever works for you, but you're very structured in it. You measure performance, you can exactly see and predict what is going to happen. All these are types of leadership, and whether we apply them as individuals working for ourselves or we apply them in our team, those are things that we need to think about. And that's what I mean by everybody being a leader in this era of AI. Because we can all now bring that vision to work. We can make it real. In fact, if you look at how we typically spend leadership time today, there's typically a few visionary leaders that set the vision for something. Then it trickles into transformative leaders that make sure that the vision gets adopted by those that can take it to the next level and make it strategic. And then the strategic leaders, they work with the management level to turn it into transactional leadership and really execute on getting us to this point. But this is changing. The way it's changing is that it's going to turn more and more into this direction. Why? Because AI will be able to do more and more of the elements you see at the bottom of this slide. They'll be able to do more and more of the transactional work, more of the strategic work, because if there's less transactional work because it's automated by AI, then you spend less time on strategic work. But the transformative and the visionary becomes incredibly important. And the transformative will also change, because when you define vision, you set vision and really want to get people on board with that, you're now not only getting people on board with this, you're also getting your AI agents on board with this. They need to be inspired in the same way, because otherwise they will be producing the wrong thing. And we will all, every single one of us, will be leaders that have the abilities to do these things. And we firmly believe that the tooling and everything that will enable this is, first of all, not there today, but it'll come. It'll come. So it'll be a massive change. It's a massive opportunity for everybody here to embrace this change. And think about it again. It's a change in how we do things and what we focus on. It is not just taking jobs away. That's not what it does. But it changes it. And I think that's an important element to recognize and realize and embrace it. I think it's super exciting because, again, if you believe in the promise of software, this takes us there. Software is not only something that happens on our computers. Software is something that happens interactively between computers, planes, trains, everything. Everything is interacting. Now, the enablement of that happened years ago with IoT and other elements. So the elements that makes everything connected and managed by software is there. So we have endless opportunities for innovation here. And I'm sure you all sit with ideas in your organizations, whatever line of business you're in. If you think about software in this way, that software is everything, everywhere, and everything is connected, and you have access to any type of data you want, use that as a starting point for your thinking. Don't think about, oh, I wonder if I can get access to this thing. It's like, no, you can get access to this thing. Always push the thinking on this. We are at a really, really defining moment. The steam machine was a defining moment. The assembly line was a defining moment. AI is a similar defining moment, and it's happening everywhere right now. I feel incredibly privileged to have the opportunity to be part of something that is so big, and I hope you do as well. The line of business you're in, the work you do, is right in the middle of one of the most important things that we have seen in humankind. And as we heard earlier, we can get it wrong. If we get it wrong, let's make sure we get it right and fix it. Just as the Wright brothers, they didn't get it right from the beginning. They had a lot of scars, bruises from planes crashing or not taking off. We will have the same. We will make mistakes. We will have bruises. We will have scars, but we will get it right. That's our job. Our jobs in the software industry is to get this right and treat it ethically and all the elements that I'm sure you have talked about as well. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this. I have really enjoyed being here and sharing some of these thoughts with you. So I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Mr. Christian Pedersen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, sir, but can I have you up here on stage again? But what I will do is say this. He brought perspective to the whole conversation that we want to have today. Don't you think so? Yes? Yeah. So I hope you took down some thoughts, because all of you, you wonderful people, you're in a defining moment of your lives. How you can make the right impact. Be the transformational leader that we require. And this leader deserves a small token of appreciation from us. So I'd like to invite Mr. Niroshan Balasurya from the organizing team to hand over a token of appreciation to our keynote speaker of day 2, Christian Pedersen.
All right. Wow, thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, sir.